Okay, now folks, we're going to learn about language variations and change. At this study, we will have to learn about language variations as change in progress stable variations and the role of speakers in language change, in language change, assumptions about general rules, and changes in individual speech over lifetime age grading. Data collections method for researching language change is possible to be learned later. In the traditional view, work in social linguistics raises long-standing questions. Can linguistic change can be observed while it is actually occurring? In modern linguistics, the answer to that question has usually been a resounding negative. Following the examples of two of the founders of the modern discipline, Saussure and Bloomfield, 1959 and 1933, many linguists have maintained that change itself can be observed. All that we can possibly hope to observe are the consequences of change. However, the kinds of studies we looked at in the chapter 6 and 7 earlier, that certain kinds of variations in languages can be related to a variety of social factors. Some investigators have been content merely to demonstrate such relationships. Others have developed a strong interest in trying to show how some of the variations analyze changes that are constantly occurring in languages, and that some of these changes also have a clear directions in them. As we will see later, studies how certain kinds of variations relate to language change have given a new impetus to work in historical, that is, diachronic linguistic, and therefore to linguistic theory. In the traditional view, in what we will call the traditional view language change, the only changes that are important in language are those that can be demonstrated to have structural consequences. So we have uh, alternatively distinctions may be gained where there was none before, as in house with as, to house with z, and finally thing and thing. In each of these cases, a single phonological entity became two. There was a structural split, so we can find instances of phonemic collisions, situations in which a contrast existed at one time but was later lost, and instances of phonemic split, situations in which there was no contrast at one time, but a contrast developed. According to this view of change, that is all we can really say, because it is structural considerations alone that are all important. Variations is either controlled by circumstances, for example, allophonic, as when the p and pin are aspirated, but the p and spin is not. Or it is free, it is random. Internally motivated change in language is observed through its consequences. Such change, of course, is not restricted to phonology, but morphology as well as also syntax of language change. In the same way, it is possible, therefore, to write about internally motivated language change, that is, histories of language showing the structural changes that have occurred over periods of time through use of this principle of contrast versus lack of contrast. Externally motivated change. This second kind of change in language is externally motivated. This is change brought about through language contact. Changes that occur through borrowing from other dialects or languages are often quite clearly distinguishable. Speakers of different languages may have different views about borrowing. English has a long history of borrowing, and most present-day English speakers rarely accept loan verbs. In some societies, however, borrowing is socially, even politically stigmatized. France is well known for language purity measures, seeking to keep words such as email, block, and more recently, hashtag out of the language. This provocative attitude includes pundits and columnists railing about the demise of French, but also the French Culture Ministry has played a role, and its websites include a page where people can suggest French origin words replace mostly English borrowings, which are creeping into the language. See link to this page on our companion website. In trees and waves. The traditional view of language change also favors a family tree account of change and of the relationship among languages. Linguists tend to reconstruct the histories of related languages of varieties of language in such a way that sharp differentiations are made between those languages of varieties. It is the last view of change through use of the concepts of wave and diffusions that we see the possibility that study of variations opens up to us for understanding the process of change. The family tree view focuses on the consequences of change and particularly on internally motivated language change. But if we believe that language are changing all the time, and linguists do hold that belief, we should also be able to see change in progress if we can recognize it. If we can interpret the variations we see, some of it at least, as a way of a change going through a language, and we can see changes apparently diffusing through sets of similar linguistic items, we may also want to recast or even abandon the traditional Sojourner and Bloomfieldian view of language. To do so, however, we will have to be sure that what we are observing is change and not just random fluctuations. That will be our major concern in the rest of the chapter. That's all, folks, for now.